Welcome, everyone, to the inaugural latest Google Cloud Innovation Series, coming to you live. I'm Lynn Langit, a Google Cloud Data Analysis Innovators Champion, and your MC for the day. I'm here with Matthias, another Data Analytics Innovators Champion from the Google Cloud Data community. Usually, we're just like all of you, and we go to sessions like these as attendees. But today, we're happy to be on stage and join Googlers for this keynote. Matthias and I will be looking at the live chat throughout the session and will be moderating your questions at the end of the session. So remember to keep the questions coming. We'll try to get to as many questions as possible, but if we don't get to your questions now, please remember we'll close the day with a final Q&A, and the Google team is using the hashtag AskGoogleDataCloud on Twitter for any questions you may have today or in the future. Also here with us are Garrett Kazmaier, Bruno Aziza, and Matthias Nietzsche. I'm proud to share the stage with the top data leaders and champions. This event was created to demonstrate Google Cloud's commitment to our data doers, whether you're on this virtual stage with us or not. We see you, we hear you, and most importantly, we believe in what you can do when you build with Google's Data Cloud offerings. This event is part one in a quarterly series where Google Cloud will tackle a new area of their data cloud piece by piece. Today's quarterly event is about all things data analytics. But in future quarters, we will have events focused on all things databases, all things AI and ML, and all things BI and Looker. We want to invite you into our data community and give you a number of things. These include a more exclusive access to our leaders and our thinking, a first look at new product releases, use cases, and how they work in the console, the opportunity to get your questions answered live, and the chance to connect with one another and to join our community for future events, swag, and meetups to come. And with that, I'm going to pass it over to Garrett to provide more about Google's data analytics strategy, offerings, and our mission.
Hey, good morning, everyone. Super thrilled to be here on this Cloud Innovators Innovation Day. That is, super awesome and fantastic. And I have the privilege to kick us off for today. I'm heading all of Google's data and data analytics services and the databases. So, it's kind of my event too. And I thought the best thing we can do in this session today is basically quickly leveling on why it is different that we do, why you are here in this call and why it's meaningful for us to have a conversation about the future of data. So as we all know, right, Google started with a pretty simple interface, pretty much a search box and two buttons, search and I'm feeling lucky. And the entire idea was to make the world's information accessible and usable for everyone. But as the service grew, as the internet grew, it basically meant that Google had to deal with all of the internet's data in one shape or form, and basically with every person on the planet consuming that service. And that has created a unique environment, a unique set of constraints, and it's set of a flywheel of innovations in a data analytics space. And this is one of the key insights that I want to share with you, so you understand how we are architecting and building our services. And the key piece, if you like, is that the reckoning is there are three big paradigm changes, and they are really meaningful when we put them together. Because most of the solutions that we are seeing in classical data technology, if you like, are basically just centered around one of these themes, just dealing with a lot of data. Hey, we have all seen the wave of data lakes and so forth. Or we're seeing just, one technology to cover serving and a high level of reach and connectiveness to user. Or we are seeing just one or a few set of systems for a particular set of workloads. But what we are actually seeing is that, first of all, data is limitless. If you think about Google's scope with searching the internet, from years and years ago, practically today, every company is a big data company. And we ran a statistic, just in December last year, and we looked how much data is being analyzed in BigQuery. compared to 1 year prior to that. And it was a 350% increase. And basically tells you that everyone is having more and more data, and everyone is really understanding that virtually it's a decision how much data you want to leverage. It's not really about only what you have. The second key piece, that data is really reaching anyone. There is no limit anymore in how data is being used. And that even transcends company boundaries, today. Again, we did a statistic, a 7-day period, and just seeing how customers were sharing data over BigQuery, and we saw that more than 4,500 organizations have exchanged more than 255 petabytes of data securely just in BigQuery. Basically, this means that you are also now connecting your network, your suppliers, your partners in a data ecosystem to you. Data is truly going beyond all borders. And the third paradigm change that, well, there is no one API or one right way of working with data. It is long forgone that it was a SQL-only world. And it's actually not about just doing Spark for data engineering anymore. It's about real-time streaming, data-driven application frameworks, and really understanding that all of these workloads are still connecting to the same set of data and connecting it back, to the same set of people. And again, an interesting statistic, when we looked at the last year alone, we saw that there was a 2.5 times increase in how people have used BigQuery for machine learning, and tens of millions of machine learning models constantly being evaluated. So the key to limitless data innovation actually is understanding that all of these three paradigm changes need to come together in a data cloud, in a platform for limitless innovation. And that's really what Google's Data Cloud is all about. This is why many of the services that you have seen and experienced with are being designed the way they are. At the center, BigQuery is the heart of Google's Data Cloud for data analytics. But we have so many services around that, with data flow for streaming, PubSub for eventing, many of the technologies that you have been using already so far. And today, in this Google Cloud Data Innovators Community Call, we want to share with you the new themes, the new innovations that we are landing around the themes of limitless data, limitless reach, and limitless workloads. And the key pieces for today is that, for limitless data, a new migration service, because it should be really easy to get your data into the cloud, right? It should be frictionless. And we have invested a lot in simplifying that data journey for you. On the workload side, with Dataflow Prime and Serverless Spark, we have made great strides in making it serverless, so you don't have to worry about capacity and cluster configuration, and can just deploy workloads. And specifically in high-scale production behavior with features like auto-scaling and autopilot. And about reaching more users and making it accessible to everyone, well, a data landscape needs to be governed and secured, right? And you need to have clarity on your security and governance posture without limiting how people work with that system. That is the big idea of Dataplex. And building on that, we have a thrilling set of new design patterns. And basically, they are meant to fast-track your development journey by giving you blueprints and templates and code that you can leverage to build use cases that we have seen across many of our customers. So we have distilled them for you in order to reduce the time to value for your data projects. So I'm going to hand it now over to Bruno. But before I do that, I want to remind you that we have the Q&A at the end of the session today. So if you do have questions, please, already submit your questions ahead of time, so we can, give you the best possible answer and get as many of them as possible in the time we have. So Bruno, with that, I want to hand it over to you to take us through the highlights of these new data cloud innovations.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Garrett. Hi, everyone. I'm Bruno Aziza, and we're going to talk a lot about innovation today. I'm going to start with the first one, which is this idea of, we know how powerful cloud data warehousing can be for you. And if you follow us on our Data Journey weekly program, you've heard the stories of all these customers that are powering data-driven transformation by rapidly migrating to the cloud and migrating to BigQuery. Now, I know that when you hear migration, some of you are intimidated by the concept because you've heard from colleagues and the amazing toil in complexity that is built in some of the other traditional migrations. But that doesn't happen when you migrate to the data cloud and BigQuery. And so today we're going to talk a little bit about what that looks like. We're going to introduce some innovations, and of course, you're going to have drill down sessions to take you through that. Over the years, we have provided a large amount of capabilities to help you move your data seamlessly to the Google Cloud. And for BigQuery data transfer service, of course, Dataflow, we talked about IoT Core and Data Stream. And if you've been following us, we've also put out a lot of migration frameworks and resources to make sure you're accelerating your move to the cloud. And you've seen about the amazing results of both traditional migration from on-prem to the Google Cloud, as well as moving from another cloud point solution to the Google Cloud using these resources. Last year at Google Next, we released the BigQuery migration service to really speed up migration from Teradata to BigQuery with tooling from data transfer, automated SQL script conversion, data verification. Using the service, our customers already automatically have converted millions of lines of legacy code to BigQuery. And one of the hardest pieces of data warehouse migration is migrating the legacy business logic, like SQL queries and script and stored procedures. And so what you saw with the BigQuery migration service, it makes it easy and fast to move semantically correct and human readable translations of legacy objects with no ongoing dependency. It supports a broad range of Teradata artifacts, your DML, DDL, BTEQ. With the migration service, translation can be run in batch as well as in ad hoc directly from BigQuery SQL interface. And so now with the current version, supporting Teradata, support for additional data warehousing will be coming soon, thanks to the recent acquisition of CompilerWorks. So this is something we are really working on to make sure these migrations are a breeze for you. Today, we're excited because we're announcing a new assessment tool as part of this BigQuery migration service. It's a free tool, helps you assess your existing data warehouse, build a migration plan, and ultimately lets you migrate from your legacy warehousing even faster. Today's session, Ziho and Mohit will showcase exactly how you can take advantage of this BigQuery migration service. You'll find out how to use this tool for faster migration, not just for on-prem, but for other migration from other cloud environment. And as always, as Garrett said earlier, make sure that you engage with the session, ask questions. We want to make sure these sessions are really built for you so you can get out all the value that you need to improve your experience. All right, that's for migrations. Now let's talk a little bit about real-time, which is a theme that Garrett just talked about earlier. Now, when we started our own data journey, we knew that real-time would be critical to providing users with the most compelling experiences. We've seen a lot of innovation and evolution over the last 10 years in data warehousing and data lakes and data mesh technologies. And we believe that real-time is not just a critical component of how organizations need to operationalize AI, but actually is a big key value driver for them. And so that's why our team has been working really hard on making sure the onboarding to real-time technology is really simple. So the product at the center of that is Dataflow. It's a no-ops serverless data processing platform. It enables organizations to collect and enrich vast amounts of data that their applications and users generate. And last year, we introduced Dataflow Prime. This brings unparalleled resource utilization, radical operational simplicity to big data processing. Our goal with Dataflow Prime is to really make sure you can do a lot more with less effort. Now, what do I mean by that? Well, if you look at Dataflow Prime, it eliminates your time to having to think about sizing your resourcing needs. Dataflow Prime really comes with vertical and horizontal auto-scaling, which means that you don't have to spend days determining the optimal configuration of resources in your pipeline. Dataflow Prime optimizes resources usage so you can save money and reduce waste, right? With right fitting, you can use custom resource configuration for each stage of your pipeline. And then finally, Dataflow Prime increases productivity. Our new diagnostic tools let you meet and maintain the right business service level objective. So we recently published a report in partnership with Forrester talking to customers using these services. And, they experience, as you can see here on this slide, 171% return on their investment. They experience a 55% developer productivity improvement, and a 50% infrastructure cost saving. So, we could not be more pleased about the incredible adoption of the technology, but also the value that you're getting from these innovations as customers and fantastic members of the data engineering community. So today we're going to drill down with Sean, our senior product manager on Dataflow, as he dives into each of the features I mentioned today, so you know how to take full advantage of them. This is a session you're not going to want to miss if you're interested in real time. Now, we talk a lot about the concept of serverless. When I talked about Dataflow Prime here, another concept here that's really important to grasp is what we are doing in the Spark business area and data lake management. Over the last 5 years, we worked really hard to make sure that you have the best data lake experience. We started with optimized and managed experience for Hadoop on Dataproc, then Dataproc on GKE, which gives you a fully containerized experience. And here today, we're going to talk about two major innovations that improve your Spark experience for code execution and the management of data lakes. The first one is Serverless Spark. This is the industry first and only truly serverless experience for a Spark execution. If you look at research, IDC released research showing that developers spend 40% of their time writing code and 60% of their time tuning infrastructure and managing clusters, 60% of their time. Now, not all Spark developers are infrastructure experts. And so, this can result in tremendous impact in their productivity and ultimately the cost that it puts on the enterprise itself. That's why, we are excited, with our session today with Brad, who's developer advocate for Spark. He'll show you how you can take advantage of Serverless Spark, which is now in GA. And so you'll see how you can focus on code and logic instead of having to worry about managing clusters and tuning infrastructure, which, as we discussed, take a lot of time. And you'll see how Serverless Spark, you can submit jobs from your interface of choice and processing in auto-scaled so you can match the needs of your job. And the share on the top, I think, of this session you'll see is that with Serverless Spark, you only pay for the job duration versus the infrastructure time. So this is critical innovation, and we think it really allows you to do your job and just put it on Google to do the rest when it comes to infrastructure and scaling that infrastructure for you. Beyond today's session, I want to make sure you also look at some of the resources we've put out there for you. Particularly, think about the story of Merrick. He's the data platform engineer at OpenX and published a blog just a few weeks ago explaining the journey he took and how his team took advantage of this innovation. The blog also ends with a tutorial how you can immediately take advantage of this functionality. So we're trying to make these resources as actionable and impactful as we can for you. The second innovation is Dataplex. So Garrett talked a little bit about that. This is our intelligent data fabric, and it's designed to massively simplify data lake management. It's now in GA, so it is designed to allow you to centrally manage and monitor and govern data across your data lakes, your data warehousing, your data marts, and make your data really securely accessible to a vast array of analytics and data science tools. So we know how complex it can be to set up access control, ensuring data quality, and making trusted data available for analytics. And so with Dataplex, you're going to get an opinionated data domain-based framework so you can manage all of this. It supports open source file formats and data sources, integrates with BigQuery and open source applications like Apache Spark. Last week, we in fact published resources for you on how this new innovation in combination with BigQuery can help you build a data mesh. I'm sure this is a concept you've heard a lot about, probably even from me. And so we want to make sure we provide you with the tools and the platforms that are making tangible. You will also find resources from how Snap and Deutsche Bank, for instance, use Dataplex to make this data mesh concept a reality. And we have a great white paper as well as a tutorial so you can get started on your data mesh journey. So make sure that beyond today's session, you go and take a look at these resources. We'll make them available to you as follow-up for sure. Now, everything I talked about here is designed to make your life simpler and really accelerate your path to value from data. And as we mentioned earlier, one of the initiatives my team's driving is this idea of design patterns. So what are design patterns? They are technical assets. So think about a sample data set or sample code available in GitHub, architecture guides, training assets, and they'll help you onboard on the Google Data Cloud faster. We currently have about 40 in market, and they're all available on our catalog. And each of these design patterns really focus on a business problem, business goal that you're trying to achieve. So say, for instance, you're trying to predict customer lifetime value, or trying to build a product recommendation system, or you're trying to forecast demand, or even drive real-time fraud detection, you'll find a design pattern for that. Today, in Justina and Ibrahim's session, you'll find out a little bit more about the program, how it works, but more importantly, you'll see how we can leverage one of these design patterns very specifically. So you'll be seeing how we build a Firebase application using Google Cloud and also Google Looker. And you're not going to want to miss this session because it's very pragmatic. It is also going to be the gateway for you to get to the library of all these other great design patterns that I mentioned earlier. And these are available online. They're self-service. They're free. We're actually going to drop a link to that library for you here, and then you can see here as well on the slide on the bottom left. So we want to make sure you engage with those, so you can give us feedback as well. Let us know the ones that we're missing, the ones that we need to go out and develop for you. So as you can see here, we really are about giving you innovations, but also doing all the work that we can to accelerate the path to deploying these innovations. And so, there are more that we can do in terms of getting a platform here like today's event as a way for you to connect with other leaders in the community, right? Because being part of the Google Data Cloud community is that you have access to us, of course. You have access to all the resources that we put out to make sure we scale our best practices. But what's probably more important is actually that you have the ability to learn from each other. And that really is the goal of today's event: create a platform where you can connect with others and learn from each other. So, we want to make sure that we are helping you create this, what we might call the tribe of data leaders globally. And I'm not using the word tribe lightly here, because our guest today is no other than the VP of Engineering of the Global Data Tribe at Delivery Hero. Matthias Nietzsche is a Berlin native, is actually calling in today from Berlin. So thank you, Matthias, for joining. He was the CTO of Foodpanda from 2013 and 2020, and Delivery Hero acquired Foodpanda in 2017. And as you'll learn today, one of Delivery Hero data mesh imperatives was the fact that they're hyper local and a very distributed organization. And the organization primarily grew through acquisitions. And Matthias, who is today the VP of Engineering at the Global Data Tribe Delivery Hero, and has been doing so for the last 2 years, going to run us through how he's making this a reality for his company. So Matthias, welcome to our community event.
Yeah, thank you for a nice introduction. I'm happy to be here.
All right, well, let's dive right into it. First, for everyone here, tell us a little bit more about Delivery Hero.
Yeah, Delivery Hero just had its 10th anniversary. So the company started in 2011 as a pure food ordering marketplace. So that means we connected customers with restaurants, which could then place orders, which we then forwarded to the restaurant. And that worked well. We grow a lot, but we realized that to provide more value to the restaurants and frankly also a better customer experience, it makes sense to take over the logistics of the delivery ourselves. And that's what we did the last years. And we evolved into a delivery everything immediately platform. We have 1.4 million active riders every day on the street, delivering everything from food, of course, still, but also groceries, drugs, flowers, electronics, just everything you can fit in the bag of a rider. In most countries, our average delivery time is something like 20-25 minutes. So you see that it's really real time. For the US audience, I think it's best to think of us as a company similar to DoorDash. Yeah, just with much more countries, all outside of North America, as you see here, 50 countries, and also much more orders. 3 billion orders in 2021. Still impresses me. I mean, 3 billion. That's something like 10 million orders per day. And in terms of size, we have 43,000 employees and a little less than 10% of them working in tech. So a few hundred data engineers for sure.
So Matthias, you are humble, because I think if we look at amount of orders, you're about twice the size of a DoorDash. So, for people in the American audience here, this is a massive operation, highly distributed. And in fact, that really relates to how you build the tech architecture to accomplish innovation at the edge with a centralized management, both in the data quality, but also the data cost. So take us through that. What is the platform? How did you build it? And what are some of the systems that are coming together on top of BigQuery?
Yeah, so as often, to understand the architecture of a company, you first look at the organization. And ours is for sure special because, as you said, we grow a lot through acquisitions. And still today, we have 7 or 8 customer-facing platforms in the group. So really independent platforms with their own CTO, their own tech team, and really their own roadmap and their own plans. And in addition to at least create some synergies and to provide world-class services, we created some global services which support all of these platforms. So topics like logistics, we don't want every platform to build themselves, and also like integration with SAP, marketing tech, quick commerce, discovery, right? These are all kind of behind the scenes services we created once globally, and then provide them to all the platforms. Data obviously plays a very important role here because, on the one hand, it's an absolute nightmare because data is so highly distributed, is available in so many different structures, and even the definitions are different. So one platform thinks of an order only when it's paid, and the other platform thinks of an order as soon as the basket is filled. So there's a lot of differences in this environment, but on the upside, as a central data team, it creates a lot of opportunity for impact, right? If you find a way, if you create solutions to connect all these different teams and platforms and global services and make data exchangeable and accessible and enable analytics, it's of course enormous value for the company. And I think we talk about it later, but data mesh suited our organization very well because we didn't come from a huge monolith. We had to distribute and change responsibilities. We already had everything distributed. We just had to find a way to work together. So
and really, so let's go into that part. I just want to make sure people are clear. You've got hundreds of Airflow clusters. You've built an infrastructure where the domains actually can contribute to the overall data mesh, which is quite exceptional. Tell us how you got there. What was the journey like?
I mean, as I said, the journey started highly distributed, and we really had to figure out how we can help the different platforms and services. And the first thing we created was an experimentation platform. So think something like Launch Darkly or Optimizely, an environment where we allow the company to learn fast, iterate quickly, and try things out. So that's quite a few years ago, and really helped the company to get where it is today. The next challenge we solved was the real-time data exchange between the platforms and the global services. And with that, also a lot of standardization. As I explained, the data types are very different. And today, that's a very mature platform with 1 billion events per day, 82 unique streams, which are highly defined. So we don't allow everybody to just create a stream to share with the whole company. So there's really a lot of standardization in there. And you have 300 consumers connected to it. A massive Kafka system. And last year, and honestly, we started in 2020, we took on the challenge to break down the silos of all these different platforms and global services, which each of them had a data warehouse. And we had to find out how to connect them, how to break down the silos, how to create insights across these different data marts, if you want. And in the past, the question was always, where's data? How can I get access to it? Who needs to approve it? How do I set up the data copying? what's the quality of the data? Is the data compatible and everything? And we really solved it with our data hub. And as you see, there are a few stats there. So we have 30 domains in there, which give you access to 13 petabytes, so 13,000 terabytes of data we have available there in 17,000 tables, and it's heavily used. 500,000 queries every day. And I think it's also nice to talk a little about the infrastructure. So we selected BigQuery and then built a lot of tooling around, which I can explain further.
Absolutely. And if you, all following us on the Data Journey program, this is when we like to go into the do's and don'ts. So, Matthias did a great job giving us a quick summary of the journey and how he built this whole infrastructure in a distributed environment built on BigQuery with, as you see, a large diversity of data sources and also just talent across the organization and maybe infrastructure that is different in the domains to start with. And so now what we want to do is understand your do's and don'ts. Matthias, if you were at the beginning of this journey, what would you tell yourself you would do differently? Or what would you share with the community? Or some of the things that really matter when you build or you want to end up in where you are now, this amazing data mesh infrastructure for your company. So let's start with the first one. What is your take on this one here, specifically on over-engineering?
Yeah, it might be a little controversial because this whole day is about innovation and how much it excites us. But something I realize in a lot of interviews I have in with peers I talk to, also Google connects me with a lot of other people to exchange about data mesh. And what I see a lot is over-engineering. So people create incredibly awesome solutions, where massive Kafka-backed systems sync data which solve all the problems with come with is like metadata storage, quality monitoring, downwards compatibility, schema updates. Some people have like data federation with Presto or third-party solutions. Don't want to mention them here. But then I realized, okay, the guy I talked to is a company with 10 people. Maybe they should just copy their few terabytes of data into the same database and everything is solved. So it's really important to look at the scale of your company and your data and then find a solution which suits. And even at our scale and at our requirements, I think we found a very simple solution. We looked at a lot of providers. We looked into many different technologies, and in the end, decided for the simplest of all, I think, which is pretty much every domain we have gets a Google project with a BigQuery instance in there. All these BigQuery instances are in the same region, which allows to merge data between any instance as it would be in the same BigQuery. So there is no difference in terms of speed. And then we build the required tooling around, which is a Kubernetes cluster hosting Airflow for the data ingestion, the orchestration, the transformation, a great expectation for the quality checking, and a couple of global tools like a global catalog, access management, cost performance monitoring, and that's it. And that really allowed everybody in an organization with the right access to access every other piece of information while still having perfect ownership. So I'm pretty proud of this setup.
There's just fantastic guidance, anchored around BigQuery, Airflow, and then simplifying the architecture so you can move fast there. And I'm sure people will probably reach out to you for more details here. We've talked a lot about the technology and the journey itself, but another part I think we also like to talk about is how we think about the business objectives themselves, because it's easy to get lost sometimes into the technology, but I think you have a great perspective on how you felt about the company's goals, the constraints, and the incentives that were built inside the organization.
Exactly. So my next learning is a little reminder that with data mesh, you're not solving a technical problem. You're solving an organizational problem. It very much reminds me to a couple of years back when like 3 people startups went into massive microservice solutions. It's it's maybe not solving what you need. And something we did very well in Delivery Hero we really sat down with the top management, with all stakeholders, and really discuss what we want to solve. Do we want to reduce the data engineers we have? No. Do we want to save money? Not necessary. Do we immediately want to build data products? Well, not first thing. So we really identified what do we want to solve and got everybody's buy-in that this is what to be expected. And yeah, our focus was very much on making data accessible for everybody, combinable without any like kind of exchange job and nightly copying of big amounts of data, make the data secure, and get rid of any scalability problem we have. So yeah, BigQuery, yeah, it's just infinitely scalable, which is for a quickly growing company like ours, very important. And then also constraints. If you can change the database, which is used by some of your teams, maybe just change it to all the same technology and you get rid of a lot of complexity. So what you really can't change and what you can change. And same with motivations and incentives of people. So if a lot of people in the company are paid to build an awesome data warehouse and have a lot of pride in doing so and created an awesome solution, it will be difficult to just replace it with something global. So maybe you rather want to convince them to join your team to create a new global thing. So really set up the organization in the right way with the right expectation that you can succeed. That helped us a lot.
That's outstanding. And, I know you had a previous technology before, and as we said, this is not your first rodeo. So, when you think about laying out the right data mesh, infrastructure, you've got a lot of learnings on why this platform is helping you accomplish your business mission. So can you kind of tie those two things together for us?
Yeah. In this direction, I brought another 3 learnings. And the third one is one we learned the hard way, I have to admit. You have to simplify the adoption as much as possible. I mean, obviously, a good documentation, a good personal relations in the company, that's a no-brainer. But also think about modularization. So if everybody has to switch from their current solution, let's say a Redshift data warehouse created over 5 years with a lot of tooling, on one day to another to your solution, that will be difficult. So we had a lot of success modularizing. So you can use a part of our data mesh solution, maybe the access management, maybe the quality monitoring, maybe just our catalog. And other parts, maybe the ingestion, maybe the orchestration, you'd still do how you always did it. And so step by step, people have a very low entry barrier into the global solution and then see the advantages and step by step go in there. And what we also saw helps a lot if giving people control, because they had all the control in the past and they give up all the control. So if you allow them to extend your system, with something like inner source, like open source within a company, every piece of code of our data mesh solution is publicly available and can be changed by everybody. Everybody can create a pull request and make suggestions how to involve things. We also have this power user concept. So there are a couple of people who have really deep access to our solution, and that creates a lot of trust, and that help people to adopt it quicker. And it's just very important to remember that people build perfectly suited solutions, which now going to replace, so help them on the way.
And so
the fourth point
about the second one, but sorry for interrupting you, but often in the data mesh construct, we talk about the technology and the how it maps with the organizational constructs, but we don't talk enough about the cost and financial ops. And that was one of your observations, is how you think about cost and how it drives value. Tell us how that compares with other environments you worked with in the past, if you don't mind.
Yeah, so the cost one was really not our primary goal. We had other goals I described, but kind of an accidental but very fortunate discovery was the way behavior changes by the way BigQuery redistributes the costs. So in the past, in any kind of data warehouse environment we had in Delivery Hero, or I have seen before, there is a central team running some central infrastructure, and then a few dozens or hundreds of people around, the analysts, data scientists, they're accessing the central data warehouse. And usually you hire people, you have more dashboards going on, you have more jobs happening. This central data warehouse needs to scale. Ongoingly, it needs to scale. Every quarter, you need to cope with more load. And then you start to monitor slow queries, and then you write occasionally emails to everybody, hey, please optimize your query, we're getting slow. But it doesn't help. You have to scale up. There is no way around it. And with BigQuery, something we saw, since everybody is paying for the compute, for the querying of the data warehouse themselves. So central data warehouse team doesn't pay anymore. The team using the central data warehouse is paying. They have an immediate incentive to optimize their queries. And queries also cannot affect each other anymore. And that drove a lot of optimization. Really, query optimization, right table structures, which were better suited. And this, in the end, overall, I think, saves money.
Yeah, and I think that's really important. People don't think about this often, is how not just the technology supports the deployment, how the financial operations of the technology support the whole system. So everybody knows me here. I could be talking to you for hours, so I'm not going to do that here because I know we have a limited amount of time. People are excited to get into the rest of the event, but we're now going to switch to the Q&A part of this presentation today, and I'm already getting here signs in the background. We get lots of questions to get to. So I'm going to hand over back to Matthias and Lynn to take us through that. I think we're going to take a break to go through the questions first, and then we'll come back. Is that correct, Matthias?
Yes, that's right, Bruno. We'll be back in a few minutes, and we'll see you later. Thank you. Hi all, and welcome back. I'm Matthias, another Google Cloud Innovators Champion, and today I'm calling in from Singapore, hence why the room is so dark. Luckily, we are now all locked and loaded for the Q&A session, so let's dive in with the first question, coming from Shivam, I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly, who is asking if Dataflow or Cloud Composer is the best tool for batch processing. And I think that question might go to Bruno. Is that something you would like to answer, Bruno?
Absolutely, yeah. So there are lots of tooling here available to you depending on your environment and infrastructure. What I would do is, Sean is the absolute expert on that. And this session is actually going to talk a lot about how all these various components come together. And so what I would look at is Dataflow as the center of the ecosystem for that. Because it allows you to do batch and real time in the same environment. And look at the innovation that we're introducing with Dataflow Prime as Sean is taking you through it. So lots of different components, but what I would say to your specific question is center of gravity really is going to be Dataflow for you to get started. And then look at the innovation that attaches to that, and make sure to go to that session because we will show you in real life how these innovations are coming together.
Great. So I'm going to jump in and ask the next question. This is for Matthias and Bruno. What data trend do you think is waning this year? And what data trend is picking up momentum?
I can get us started, Matthias, if you don't mind, because I was asking this question of the community in December. I asked 2 questions on my LinkedIn profile, just get a sense of pulse from what people are thinking. And I asked them, what was the trend that surprised you in 2021? And what is the trend that you're going to be looking into in 2022? And one of the reasons for why we talked about data mesh today is because the one by far that moved on top of the list was the data mesh. People had read a lot about the data mesh in the last 2 years or so, and people were arguing, what is the difference between the data mesh and the data fabric and so forth. But they were not getting very critical, specific, tactical guidance on how to get it done. I think we're in that phase now in 2022 where The industry kind of gets the concept, as everybody's read the paper with Zermatt. Now it's about how do we make this a reality, and that's kind of why we wanted to have a leader like Matthias to talk about that, because it's a disruptive concept, but not many people have succeeded, and so we want to make sure that we put on stage the folks that are really the heroes for that. So for me, a bit data mesh. I know it's a long way to answer that question, Lynn, but I'll hand over to Matthias to give us his perspective.
Yeah, I mean, I also spent this year in the midst of implementing a data mesh. Would also take this answer and extend it a little with the governance part. So a lot of, especially technical people, look at the data mesh video and the paper and so on, and try to immediately imagine how to technically implement it and what's the right solution for it. But there's also this part of the video talking about the governance, talking about the standardization, the overarching way of defining your data, having a catalog, measuring the quality, monitoring for data incidents. And this whole fabric we now saw is actually much harder to get right than actually making the infrastructure right.
Cool. I think we'll close off with the last question then, which is asked by Jesus. And he's wondering what exactly the data mesh is and why it is so important for you guys.
Okay, so there are lots of resources, so it's difficult to summarize it all in one. But I'll say, if you think about the evolution of the average organization, how do I get to my stage of building data products? There are kind of 3 stages. I'll take you through them very briefly here because I know we're short on time, and then maybe Matthias can close us out on how he's deployed this at his own company as we covered it today. But essentially, the first problem that every organization is solving for is, do I have left-right visibility on my data, which some organizations call the data ocean. Vodafone kind of coined that term about 2 years ago, is this idea of, do I have the technical infrastructure to see all my data in my cloud, in other people's clouds, on-premise? Can I catalog that data effectively? Can I make it easily scalable, humanly, economically, and technically? So now I'm not constrained by the boundaries of the data lakes, right? So that's why the data ocean makes a lot of sense, because if you think about it, the ocean has no end to it. And so this is where data sharing is important. This is where working across transactional analytical workloads is important, is that this breadth of visibility and access to data. That's stage 1 of typical maturity of the organization. The second stage is where the data mesh comes in, where now that I have this technical infrastructure where I can see the data and I know I have the tooling to scale effectively, now I'm talking about governing the data, making sure that I have governance of access, but also governance of cost, and do that while I can enable innovation at the edge. So the domain can innovate and it can also contribute to the rest of the organization. Really, really hard to do this because we have dealt over the years with systems that could not follow that, right? But now that you have technology like the cloud that enables you to distribute that, now you have a lot more access to tooling to enable people to build their own systems. As Matthias showed it again today, you can find situations where you have high level of maturity on the technical side to enable that. The stage after that, and this is what Matthias talked about today, is now you're building data products. This is where machine learning, universal semantic layers come in, where you have frameworks like LookML, for instance, as a way to build data-rich, intelligent applications as a framework. So now you can distribute the consumption of analytics, intelligent analytics, to your community. So that's a quick flyby, and there's a lot of resources. We have a data mesh tutorial, we have a data mesh white paper and data mesh blog that you can look at for more details on that. Matthias, what's your take?
Yeah, for me, data mesh is also not any particular technology which you have to follow. It's really a concept to scale your organization. Yeah, how to enable a huge amount of people to work with data, and that's in that sense, it's very similar to what microservices did a few years ago to software engineering. Now, data mesh is doing the same decomposition of a big monolith of data for data organizations, and yeah, if done right, extremely powerful and simple, hopefully.
Great. Well, it looks like we're at time for our session. So if you're like me, you've learned a lot. So thanks to you for listening in. Thanks to our speakers. We couldn't get up to all of your questions. Keep asking in the chat, and we're going to get to your questions at the end of the day in our closing Ask Me Anything session. Make sure you use the hashtag on Twitter, Ask Google Cloud Data. And I'm Lynn Langett. Thanks for joining.